come on, I gave you like 900 free tutorials. Now I'm asking you for $50 and you can't give it to me. Like, I was the only person making a video about SaaS. If you look for SaaS, it was my video and that was it. YouTube ad money alone was paying like my entire mortgage. The problem was for me is that I'd been giving away so much for free that nobody wanted to pay for it. I collected a paycheck for a year-ish and was having an awful time. The startup sucked. I was just dealing with it. They clearly weren't going to go anywhere. The startup CEO was hounding me about some bug on a pre-alpha version of the software. Mind you, it's 3 days after my son was born. And it was a Sunday. Basically, the first episode was released maybe about half a month after I had quit my job at the startup. And the podcast basically was a hit overnight, which helped everything, right? We were getting 40,000 downloads an episode pretty much out of the gate. Oh, actually, LevelUpTutorials was actually acquired last year. I work for Sentry now, and Sentry owns both Syntax, the podcast, as well as LevelUpTutorials. The dream is to give away this stuff for free, and now you can do it, and you can still get paid.
You will recommend for someone else to start their own Level Up tutorial sort of premium website?
And that's one of the things we've been really cognizant about, even with the acquisition, is that we don't want too much to change, because the show has a very specific feel and vibe. If we ruin that feel and vibe, we'll ruin the show. I'm here. My son was actually just peeking in my office window just now. I was able to get someone on Reddit to apologize to me after they were trying to argue with me about something.
Welcome, guys, to Yalla Let's Code podcast, a podcast where we interview software engineers to share their entrepreneurial story. So currently we are on the 8th episode of Yalla Let's Code podcast, and we have Scott Tolinski, the co-host of the Syntax FM, and also the founder of Level Up Tutorial, where you can find tutorial and courses for web developer, mostly JavaScript related. And let's introduce our guest for today after this intro. Exciting news! The Yalla Let's Code merch store is launching soon. Get ready for cool dev/entrepreneur t-shirt, poster, and stickers, and join our waitlist for exclusive access and a special discount by visiting shop.yallaletscode.com.
Hey, what's up? My name is Scott Tolinski. I'm a developer. I live in Denver, and I got started teaching web development in about 2012 on YouTube, where I first started my YouTube account teaching coding through there. And then over time, that just evolved into a whole online teaching platform, and then the Syntax podcast, which really stepped things up for me. And here I am today, getting to do it for a living and teaching what I love.
Awesome. Love that. Can we give the audience more information about how did you get started into web development?
I was a music major in college. I was not necessarily intending on being a web developer as my career. It's not like something that I set out to do. But ever since high school, I was making websites for fun, for hobbies here and there. And little did I know that as I was going through college and as I was looking for jobs in the music industry, the thing that I actually liked the most and was the best at was making and remaking my website to promote my other activities. So it was like, at some point, I had to take a look at things and say, I'm clearly not going to make it as a professional musician. Why am I not focusing on the things that I'm actually good at and like doing, instead of this lofty dream I had? And so I took a look at it from a more practical perspective and realized that I actually really love working on the web, and I really love the ability to create things like that. And that's really what drove me into being a web developer, because I had been doing it as a hobby. I learned a lot. I learned JavaScript and HTML and even Flash just because I wanted to as a hobby. And so by the time I started looking for jobs, I had a good skill set already built up just through fiddling around myself. So when it came down to it, I started just applying and ended up really landing a nice job in 2011 at a small agency, like a 12-person agency doing websites for local companies. And it was a really great place to really get a good handle on best practices, but also getting your hands dirty with a lot of different types of projects. We'd have a new client every other month, and I was having to start fresh and work on a new website, which means I had to learn how to be fast. I had to be really accurate. I had to deliver value because we were charging a lot for good work. So there's only 2 developers there, and my boss and mentor at the time like really showed me the ropes.
Awesome. Love that. And what are the next thing that you did after your first job?
Yeah, from there, I got another gig at the University of Michigan doing the same thing, an internal agency, about like 40 people that worked there. So it stepped it up a little bit larger. And then from there, I got hired by Ford at their internal agency, the automotive company. And that company, it wasn't Ford proper, it was the agency that Ford hired. And that agency had like 3,000 employees. So I went from like a 12-person agency to a massive agency where they were 3D scanning cars in the building and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'm working on code that would find itself on Ford.com itself across 90 different markets. It was a pretty wild project, right? Basically, as I was doing this, through my first job is when I started teaching my YouTube tutorials at my very first job. So every subsequent job I had after that mostly came from opportunities related from people seeing my YouTube channel or seeing it that I had done that extra work. Or let's say I would get a job interview for some place like Ford and they would interview me and I would say, oh, by the way, I have this YouTube channel that has 150,000 followers and I teach web development. People were always like, that's incredible. I got to get this guy. I pretty much did that until I made the choice in 2015 to go out on my own and try Level Up Tutorials full time. And it was a tough challenge. At first, I didn't know how to monetize it. I'd been giving away 200 to 300 free YouTube tutorials a year since 2012 and now 2015, and I'm asking people to buy things from me. That was a big challenge, right? Because initially some of the first comments were like, I can't believe this guy's asking for money. And it's like, come on, I gave you like 900 free tutorials. Now I'm asking you for $50 and you can't give it to me. Like, so it's a little disheartening. It definitely was a huge learning opportunity for me. And I certainly wasn't an entrepreneur at that point. I was attempting to be, but I had no skills there. I was just figuring it out.
Awesome. What was the first tutorial that you upload to YouTube related to which technology?
Yeah, so it's funny. The first tutorial uploaded was actually for Adobe Premiere because I was a really good video editor. I'd actually worked in college for a magazine doing video editing for their online clips. So I was a really experienced video editor. And I made tutorials for After Effects and Premiere before I ever made my first web development tutorial. And they weren't very good. I don't think they're online anymore, obviously. And it was just like an opportunity for me to learn. But I think from there, the very first ones that was doing in the web development space were on Drupal and Magento, were two CMS-based technologies that I had been doing a lot of work in. I just built a massive Magento website for a client that had like 10,000 products in it. So I was very deep into the Magento space. And same with Drupal. A lot of the client work that we were doing was Drupal focused. The initial tutorials, and I would say even like the first, like I said, 900 some tutorials, were literally just, I'm doing this at work. Let me just document what I'm doing at work. And it all stemmed from being annoyed at Drupal documentation. I would be doing something in Drupal and I would hit an issue. And the only way to solve that issue was to get the knowledge of somebody in the community, either in IRC, in a forum, or even like in person meetups. And I always just felt like there has to be a more accessible way for this information to be out there. Basically, I just would take my entire process and I would distill individual things down into like 15-minute videos. Like, here's how to install Drupal. Here's how to update Drupal. Here's how to install packages. Here's how to create a view. Here's how to edit a block, like little micro things. And I just made them into individual videos and cranked them out. And the first 100 videos, nobody paid attention. Nobody cared. It wasn't until I made a couple of videos on Sass, which was a CSS technology that nobody else was making videos on at the time. And even to be real, at this point, there was maybe only one or two other web development tutorial channels on YouTube. So I was very early into the game. So it wasn't like there was a ton of competition. It wasn't like I was having to compete with 8 other people doing React tutorials. I was the only person making a video about Sass. If you look for Sass, it was my video and that was it. I had a good opportunity and I really took a hold of it, which is why my channel shot up. Because early days in YouTube, channels didn't have 1 million followers. It was like getting to 150 was like a huge accomplishment. Getting to
Yes.
200 was a huge accomplishment. So it's definitely evolved a lot since then. But yeah.
Awesome. And what was the first YouTube video that made the channel popular back then related to web development?
Yeah, I think it was the SaaS stuff that it was like a whole playlist of SaaS videos. That was the first thing that blew up. And they blew up because the creator of SaaS and Compass was another addition to SaaS. We're sharing it on Twitter.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't ask them to. They found it. They shared it. They said, this is a good introduction, whatever. And then I just saw a big spike because they had Twitter followings. And after that big spike, I think people just started getting it shared a little bit more, found a little bit more. The WordPress videos, I made like a couple hundred WordPress videos. And I wasn't necessarily even like a WordPress dude. I did WordPress a lot, but I wasn't like, I was much more experienced in Drupal. But the WordPress videos really took off where I was getting like a couple 100,000 views on them and stuff without even trying. And it was just because WordPress had a huge audience. The hard part for me was I was never making videos for an audience specifically. That was never my intention. It was like, I'm making these videos for the people who want to use this stuff and the people who care about these niche topics. So it wasn't necessarily what can I make a video for that was really going to hit on YouTube. I never thought about it like that. It was, what am I doing today at work? What can I make interesting? And what am I excited about? I'll distill it down into a short video. I'll teach it. I'll put it out there. It's a resource for people to pick up later. And if I'm finding it useful, other people will find it useful as well. And so that kind of lends itself to not like necessarily having big hits, but like a big catalog of useful information that people will keep coming back to.
Awesome. What do you think, and what's the secret of being consistent in terms of publishing tutorial and stuff on YouTube, on other platform, and just keeping consistent even there's not a lot of traction at first?
Yeah, I think there has to be that understanding that people might not watch it. They might not watch it for a year. They might not watch it for 2 years. But if you keep doing it, you're going to get a lot of reps in. You're going to get a lot better. And the more you get better, the more your people are going to find you, the more you're going to continue to grow. And I think it's a tough thing because you do have to block out the ability to think, I'm not going to make it because no one's picking this stuff up. No one's going to pick it up. No one's going to pick it up for a really long time. And if they do, maybe potentially it's because you got lucky, something got shared somewhere, or you did something really well. But mostly creators that I know that are popular now, let's say folks that are really making a splash in different areas, they didn't make a splash overnight. They
Yes.
worked and they cut their teeth and they just really, really evolved their style and their technique over time, and they stuck with it. And that's the hardest thing to do. But my advice there is to just plan on that from the start. Like when I started, again, there's no such thing as like YouTube success. The biggest YouTubers weren't making a living off YouTube at that point. So it wasn't like I was going to make a living off of it. I wanted to have some extra cash to maybe pay my rent or to help out with paying for my wedding or car payment or something. But it was just like, hey, what can I do for extra cash? It was never like, this is going to be my career. And there was no pressure behind it. So I think you have to take a look at it from, I'm doing this because I like to do it and I want to improve it and I want to share this stuff with the community rather than I want to be a big success. Now, granted, you can evaluate what makes other people a success. You can take things and learn things from other channels. I certainly did that. I watched a lot of YouTube, which is the main reason why I started in the first place. I watched a lot of YouTube. I watched a lot of video tutorials and I had a lot of opinions about what made good and bad tutorials. So certainly you can evaluate it, but don't rip somebody else's style off. Have unique ideas, have unique plans, evolve that, work at it, and just know that it's not going to be an overnight success ever, unless you get lucky.
Yes. Yeah. Because some people in this space might get lucky and people will make it the formula for their success, which is not the case. And also you mentioned like what make a good tutorial. What do you think like the secrets behind a good tutorial, especially in this area with all different like a YouTuber slash influencer that are making tutorial related to web development? So in this market, what make a good tutorial stand out?
Yeah. For me, it's not assuming that the audience knows too much. A lot of times people, when they teach things, they assume that the audience knows all of the jargon, all of the specific terms for everything. And that can cause a problem because typically the people that are looking for a YouTube tutorial in the first place don't know that jargon. They don't know the things that you're talking about at all. So when you explain something, it's important to distill it down to a way that even metaphorically is something that people can understand when you're not talking about strictly technical terms. Even if you define those technical terms ahead of time, somebody's going to hit that video at that point and they're going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about here. So it's really important to always assume the audience knows less and not get bogged down teaching the minutia, but explaining things in a way that somebody who is not an experienced developer could understand. It's not like the explain it to your mom type of thing where you're explaining it to somebody who doesn't know web development at all, but you want to at least have an eye for what are the things that are going to cause hiccups and possibly jargon based things. Also, a big pet peeve, small code, you can't see what the person's typing, mouth noises and eating, bad audio. Generally, like bad audio is a huge one. At that time on YouTube, just about nobody had good audio. There was like one or two channels that had decent audio. Everybody else is recording with that crappy little Microsoft microphone that came with a lot of awful Dell computers at that time. So, or even worse, they would have no audio and they would like type on a Word document what they were doing. And it's just like, there's a huge opportunity here to up the production values a little bit. So I think you're never going to have too good of production values. And that's something you can invest your time in and your energy in to know that outside of the web development world, people are doing really great things with video all the time. What lessons can you learn there? How can you make the presentation as smooth as possible for folks so that way they know what you're doing, they can see what you're doing, they have access to the code, whether that's on GitHub or whatever, or even better, it's in an online REPL that people can mess with while they experiment with you. But just basically what you want to do is you want to break down any of those barriers that people might have to be able to follow along with what you're talking about.
Thank you so much for this good information about making a good tutorial. And also, I would like to know what was the time that you are making a living of Level Up tutorial?
Yeah, it's tough. So I tried to do it in 2015 is really what it came down to. And I was doing pretty well because YouTube revenue at that time was pretty decent. And I had a good side, like a 250,000 followers on YouTube. And YouTube ad money at that time was way better. So at that point, YouTube ad money alone was paying like my entire mortgage, right? It was good enough money to pay my rent. And next thing you know, YouTube slashes revenue. And so for me, that like cut it in half. So your next thing you know, you're all of a sudden 1 month to the next, I'm making half of what I was making before with the exact same views. And you're thinking, oh no, I cannot rely on this platform to for my money. And this is before brand deals. Nobody was getting brand deals at this time. There was no such thing as let's get a brand deal on a web development sponsorship outside of YouTube ads. It was YouTube ads or bust. So the only other option was to sell the content. And at that time, I had picked up the idea of, okay, let's try this. I'll have a subscription service that you can watch all of my tutorials without ads. That's it. That's the benefit. You get the subscription service without ads. I'm going to charge you $6 a month for it. And that's the only difference. And that didn't catch on at all. I maybe got like 50 people paying from that. It's like nothing. Out of a YouTube channel that has 250,000 followers, nobody wanted, nobody bit. And so then I thought, okay, maybe I'll make a premium course. And I worked really hard. I released a premium course on CSS animations, and it was really exquisite. I worked really hard on it. I upped my production values, and it was only available for purchase. I sold like 10 of them in a month, like nothing. Crushed. The problem was for me is that I'd been giving away so much for free that nobody wanted to pay for it. And it was a really hard hole that I found myself in. So then I reevaluated. I made another course, another premium course on React Native, and it was even bigger and better. Sold nothing again. At that point, I was getting really discouraged, and I took a job at a startup because bank account was completely dwindling at that point. We had just moved. It was like very tough. So I took a job at a startup. I collected a paycheck for a year-ish and was having an awful time. The startup sucked. I was just dealing with it. They clearly weren't going to go anywhere. The founder of it was a complete asshole. It was awful. I just dealt with it. It was like, I need a paycheck. And so during that time is when I met Wes. We started talking a little bit about business ideas and podcasting and stuff like that. And we hadn't really formulated, like we'd formulated the idea of syntax, but we hadn't really dove into it or anything like that. And then Around the birth of my first child, like the week of the birth of my first child, the startup CEO was hounding me about some bug on a pre-alpha version of the software. Mind you, it's 3 days after my son was born, and it was a Sunday. I was just like, what is this? What am I doing here? So I quit. I quit like on the spot, basically. And it was like, all right, now I have a child. I have a dwindling income, and I have no job. So what am I going to do? And Wes and I connected. We had been talking about the podcast for a little bit, but we connected and was like, let's get serious about this and let's make it work. And around this time, and this whole time, I was trying to make Level Up as a business work on the side. And I'd gained like 150, 100 subscribers to it. Like, by no means good money, but it was still something. And it just wasn't working. I had no marketing arm of it. Again, my YouTube audience didn't want to pay for it. Wes and we decided to do the podcast, and basically the first episode was released maybe about half a month after I had quit my job at the startup. So from me quitting that to starting Syntax was like that. I need to do something. And the podcast basically was a hit overnight, which helped everything, right? We were getting 40,000 downloads an episode pretty much out of the gate. We had sponsors from the fourth episode onwards. That in turn became a good marketing arm for me for Level Up Tutorials. So not overnight, but by the end of that first year, it went from being like, oh no, what am I going to do, to, okay, now I have a very successful podcast that acts as a funnel into my actual business that I've been trying to succeed with. And then I have the podcast, which has sponsorships and all that stuff. Suddenly it was like, okay, I can actually have some room to breathe. I can focus on making this a real business. And I with a lot of learnings from Wes, by the way, because one thing that Wes is really talented at, he's always been a very skilled marketer. He understands business really well. And that's how we originally connected. Was I was going to teach him how to do better at YouTube, and he was going to teach me how to do better at business. That was our partnership initially. And because of that, I learned so much from him, and I was able to grow Level Up Tutorials as a legitimate business through the podcast. And it all culminated in a bit of success there.
Awesome. That's I never know like the backstory of the Syntax FM, but when you mention it, a lot of think, yeah. And I would like to know, how did you know like a West Boss like before? Is it like a just from online from Twitter, or like you meet them in person? How like the first interaction was?
Yeah. So I first met Wes via, I believe via Twitter. It might have been via email. He might have sent me an email. I had I released a course, and that course was called React for Beginners. And I had released that course maybe about a week after Wes had released his course, React for Beginners. Obviously, it's a very generic name, but I didn't know Wes at that point at all. And I didn't know he was such a big thing. His course, I was like, oh, his course is really well done. But I didn't know him at all. I didn't know his work. And when he sent me that email, I was like, okay, yeah, yours is legit. You released first. I'll change mine. I'll change the name of mine, no problem. And so I changed the name of my course. And then I think, I don't know if he knew my work or whatever, but we just got chatting through email about YouTube and all that stuff. And at that time, it was a bit in vogue to do something called like a mastermind group, which is like a group that meets and shares ideas. And so I had been thinking about joining or creating a mastermind group, and I even applied to several at that time. And we had a couple other people that were also interested in the same thing. We said, let's just start our own. We have no idea what this is like. Let's just meet once every other week and just chat about business and stuff. So it was me, Wes, Josh Owens, who is in the Meteor community, and then Joel from Egghead. And there was a couple other people that didn't show up beyond the very first meeting, but that was pretty much it. And we would just hang out and talk business and help each other out here and there. And that was really how I got to know Wes. But we didn't even meet in person until 2 years after the podcast had been going. We met in person for the first time when we did a live Syntax show in, I think it was Jamstack Conf. But it's very funny. You could find that video on YouTube where they announced that Wes and I were meeting for the first time. Yeah, it's funny because we were just chatting as friends, and it just worked out because we both just liked this stuff so much that I think it was just naturally a good fit.
Yes, I think I watch a lot of Syntax FM, and the flow between you and Wes was like a really good, and it's a complementary podcast. So everyone has different style of talking and also of giving information. It was like a good partnership from my perspective, and you done it well. And the next question will be, what is next after the first episode of the Syntax FM? How Level Up Tutorial gain traction from the podcast, and does it grow that you can make a good income from the online courses?
Yeah. So the thing that the podcast did for me, well, beyond like I said, the first we recorded 3 episodes before we released any, and we're gonna say, all right, we have these 3 in the bag, so that way we can at least be prepared. But by the fourth episode, we had sponsors for the podcast. But in terms of, so the podcast was a success from the jump, and that's largely due to the fact that I had a big audience over here. Wes had a big audience over here. We were able to combine those 2 big audiences in terms of people who are interested in podcasts. So people knew us. And what it did for me is it exposed my work at that time, which was very practiced. I had done so many video tutorials that exposed my work to a bunch of people who were not YouTube getting it for free, who were willing to pay for good content. It exposed that work to them who never knew I existed because maybe they weren't within my YouTube bubbles. I think that was really it. That's what helped me out specifically, was the fact that there was no preconceived notion that they were going to get so much for free from me, but they could tell that I did quality work. They would sign up, they would see my quality work. And around that same time, somewhere in that exact same time, what I had done is I changed my strategy to, instead of you Level Up Tutorials being like an ad-free platform or a full course platform, what I did is I gave the first 5 tutorials of a 20 to 30 video tutorial series away for free. So I gave the first 5 videos away for free on YouTube. And the 6th video on YouTube would be like, you want to see the rest of this course? Go here. I always made the
Mm.
first 5 videos super useful. It wasn't like I was hiding too much stuff, but it was like, here's 5 super useful videos. If you like them, here's the rest of the course. And that was a big change as well. That was probably one of the big reasons why it succeeded. And honestly, I should have done that from the first place. But like I said, I had no prior training in this stuff. So for me, it was all like learning by doing. That's certainly the type of person I am. So I think that was a big shift, and it worked for me. And then people were initially mad about it. You can definitely see some angry comments about people. Even I still today, I get occasional angry comments on some of those videos that were like, here's the 6th video, go buy the course here. And people would get a little angry about that. But for the most part, people were really happy to pay for my work once they got it. And once that was the expectation that, hey, you're going to get premium courses, they're all here, I almost stopped publishing on YouTube entirely and focused only on the platform. And the YouTube was more or less a promotional aspect for me. So I changed up even my YouTube strategy to be doing one-off videos here and there. And I almost stopped posting on YouTube entirely just because I was a little bitter about the income slashing and all the things. I was bitter about the YouTube audience being so aggressive towards me about asking for money for something that I'd been giving as a service for free. It was definitely like a shift into turning Level Up Tutorials into a platform of its own instead of relying on YouTube as a platform to run my business. One of our very first mastermind meetings, Joel from Egghead told me very explicitly, you got to get off YouTube. You have to get off YouTube. And I didn't want to hear it at the time. I was like, no, I'm fine. I thought I knew it. And he was like, you got to get off YouTube. And he was so right. I should have listened to him from the jump.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. And also, by the way, I used to pay for the subscription for the premium courses. I used to learn, I think it's like a React JS with Gatsby back then when I started learning how to code, I think around
Yeah.
2020. So the COVID and stuff. It was really like good quality content there. And I enjoy it so much that I learn a lot of from your content. And the other stuff that I would like to know, like for if you would like to start over level up tutorial with all the things that you currently have, what you will done better starting off. You already mentioned that you will get off from YouTube because it doesn't pay much. But what other thing that you would like to recommend people to do?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I would not recommend people to do is commit too much right away. One of the things that I did, even when I rebooted Level Up Tutorials as this premium platform, was I committed to doing 24 to 30 videos a month, which was a part of my normal schedule. That's how I worked. But when you do it for so many years, and then we have COVID and my family's home while I'm trying to record all this stuff, it got really tough. I was doing 3 or 4 years of doing 20 some videos a month on a given topic, it was really easy to get burnt out, especially I was just doing a lot of content. It wasn't like I never had things to talk about. I always had 4 or 5 series that I really wanted to do at any given point. So it was never like I was like fishing for content. It was just the grind. So I'd promised too much was really it. And just being aware of like, the commitment that you're promising when you make a commitment to people, because I certainly wasn't going to back down or change on that commitment. And ultimately, what I had to do was bring on third party content creators, really skilled folks like James Quick and Colby Fayak and Amy Dunn, like people to do courses with me. And then obviously I would pay them royalties and I'd pay them for the course. But that way I wasn't falling short on that commitment to my audience. But at the same time, I wasn't having to grind out that content. I think Wes really has had a better model from the start. But the problem for me is that I had committed to a different model and I couldn't change, because if I were to change, it would have really ultimately, I don't think I had laid the groundwork. And at that point, it would have been too difficult to lay the groundwork to start without having the massive effort. And really, what that is, you first have to build an audience. You build an audience some way, whether that is via YouTube doing specific one-off content or content that's going to hit in some kind of way, or doing social medias. TikTok now is a huge one to grow an audience on, or even just through blog posts and Twitter or whatever. You grow an audience first. Once you have that audience, you collect them off-site. The big thing is that collecting people on a newsletter is tough, but if you can do it, it works really well. From there, instead of releasing a massive amount of, I don't want to say lower quality, but more disposable, like quick series, you release bigger thought of evergreen courses that are like really well designed. You package it up into a big premium product and you sell it for more money, which is what Wes did. It was like, that was never my skill set. I'm gonna be real. Like one of the skills that I've always had was to do a lot of things. I'm not the type of person that's going to edit a video for a month. I'm going to just record a new one if it's not any good. It was hard for me as a human being, the way my mind worked, to succeed in a model that required more long-term planning. That's not one of my skills. But if you have the ability to do long-term planning out a big course release is a great way to do it, as long as you have that audience that's going to buy. The one thing, a mistake that a lot of people make is that I made very specifically, I made a big course without knowing that people were going to buy it, and they didn't buy it. Being able to validate your idea through newsletters, through polls, through talking to your community, those types of things, being aware that like, just because you release something and it's good, most people won't care. You have to hype it up. You have to get people interested. You have to do the work to be excited about it. It's a conversation I have with my wife all the time, because she's a really skilled psychologist, but she suffers from not wanting to hype herself up ever. She really struggles with really, I want to say, like bragging about her skills, but she's very talented. And the conversation we have is, if you're not letting people know that you have these skills and your stuff is good, then nobody's going to know, nobody's going to care. So being able to hype yourself up and hype up your work and all that stuff is something you'll want to take time to really dial in. And it's something that I've really had to learn. And I'm still not great at it, honestly. It's a skill that I'm having to improve myself all the time as well.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. And can we get like some numbers about Level Up Tutorial, like how many active subscriber, maybe some number related to the courses, like how many courses currently you have and how many active subscriber you have?
Yeah. So actually, Level Up Tutorials was actually acquired last year. We have no
Hmm.
paying subscribers currently because the platform is completely free. So every single video we've ever done on there is free. In fact, we're even going to be integrating a lot of the content into the Syntax brand as a whole. So Syntax and Level Up Tutorials have now merged, where we've totally opened up the site and the platform. So that way, if you want to learn from any of the content that we have there, and by all means, there's a ton of really great evergreen content. I have 2 courses on building authentication from scratch in Node that I don't feel like ever really got the true recognition they deserved, because they were really solid courses. But if you want to get into any of it, it's all free now. And we have, I don't know how many users, 10, 20,000 users, right? So there's a good amount of people using the site, but it's all free now. So we're not charging anything for it anymore. And that was part of the agreement when we joined. So I work for Sentry now, and Sentry owns both Syntax, the podcast, as well as Level Up Tutorials. And part of that agreement with Sentry was I get to work on Syntax full time, and I get to work on making Syntax into a bigger platform. But the cost of that is that they would take over Level Up Tutorials, open it up, and make it free. And honestly, it was a really great way to exit that project. So I'm still working on it. It's still a thing, but now it's merging into Syntax and eventually will become completely encompassed by Syntax.
Wow, that's amazing. I never know that like a Sentry gets acquired the Level Up tutorial. Yeah, that's good to know. And congratulations for that. It's like the acquisition is public, so can we get like an estimate of the acquisition if you don't mind sharing that for sure?
Yeah, I won't get too much into the money side of things. A big part of the acquisition was really that I would work as an executive producer over at Sentry for 4 years. So basically, a big part of it is becomes my salary over at Sentry, and then the rest of it was basically in bonus and stock options. I'll say it was worth my decision to do it, but that said, it was a really kind of tough decision on my part. Not because of the syntax side of things. I really wanted to work on syntax full time. I knew that they would be good stewards of syntax. I knew they would treat us really well. But having to leave the Level Up Tutorials brand as I'd grown it was tough for me in that respect. So they definitely made it worth it for me. And a big part of it was the stability of the full-time employment. Like being an entrepreneur is great. Working hard on the business was great. I saw a lot of really awesome things from it. But at the end of the day, I'd made a commitment to doing 20 some videos a month. And after, man, it was like 6 years of that, it was really wearing on me. So there was definitely an aspect of the burnout in that decision as well. But yeah, it was mostly just bonus stock options and salary.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like you mentioned that it's really hard to be able to sold out the level up tutorial. What is really hard about solding a level up tutorial because it's like your baby right now? What is the hard part about
Totally.
the acquisition?
Yeah, it was just giving up that thing that you had grown from the start. The branding, the we had just in November of that year, we had just launched a brand new redesign that I'd been working on for half a year. And it was a massive project. And we launched that redesign in November, and then March we were announcing that it was being acquired and that I was going to be opening up the accounts for free. So it was like I'd done all this work to make it into the platform of my dreams, and then it's like, all right, I'm not even going to get to see what that platform could have been. And that's okay because it's free. And that was a huge part of it for me, was that when I started and I'd done most of my whole a lot of videos, right? The whole premise was this is free. That was the whole premise. And that was like a big thing for me, was that it was free. It was a big point of pride for me that it was free. And in fact, having to charge money for it was always the hardest part for me. Having to ask for money for this stuff that I've been working really hard on was hard for some reason. But being able to give it away for free was always the dream. In one respect, it was hard giving up that brand and signing over the ownership of that brand and all that stuff that I had worked so hard on. But in the other respect, it was, you know what? The dream is to give away this stuff for free, and now you can do it and you can still get paid. In one respect it was hard, in another respect it was very easy.
Yeah, makes sense. I have a
Yeah, and we
question that
had acquisition offers before and they were no good.
awesome. Good to know that. I would like to ask you a question about currently you start level up tutorial and you're growing up. So it's currently gets acquired by Sentry and you will get to work on that full time. So this is like a dream for many people. You will recommend for someone else to start their own level up tutorial sort of premium website for web development in this current market?
It's a tough business to be a part of because there's a lot of competition. And a subscription service is a tough ask too now because everybody's got a lot of different subscription services. The one thing that's always going to work is high quality content done well to an audience that likes the content. And whether or not this premium subscription model service is correct, it's definitely a way that people can get a lot of value out of your product. That said, it was a grind. It was really hard. It was hard sourcing other content creators because a lot of people want to do it themselves now, which is totally
Yes.
respectable and it makes a lot of sense. You have to deal with undercutting from awful websites like Udemy. You have to deal with people who are releasing big courses for a lot of money, and then they might view the subscription model as being like maybe a little bit less. So it's tough. I might recommend more of doing the big courses, or even heck, nowadays, one of the better things you can do is with YouTube, brand deals and in sponsorships is a more than okay way to go. I know a lot of really successful creators who make a great living off of sponsorships and brand deals, which again wasn't a huge option for us, which now is maybe a different story. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different routes you can go. Building a full tutorial course platform like Level Up Tutorials or Egghead or any of these other ones is going to be a tough sell. A way that I really like it, the way it's done, is like View School. I don't know if you're familiar with it. View School is, I believe, a Jeffrey Way project, which he was an inspiration of mine when I first got started. But View School, the thing that they do really well. So View School is, again, it's a course subscription platform for Vue tutorial content. They do a good job of being like the de facto place to learn Vue.js. If you want to learn Vue.js, you're going to find everything you need there. It's very focused. It's hyper focused on one niche. Now, hyper focusing on a niche is only going to work if that niche has staying power, right? Vue is a massive platform. A lot of people use it. You become the de facto resource for learning a thing. That's going to be a success no matter what, as long as that technology is a success. It's hard to bet on those things. It's hard to know that's going to pay off. Railscasts was actually a model that I had followed when I was learning. Railscast was an old site that was like Vue School. That was the model I initially built Level Up Tutorials off of. Yeah, it's a tough go to build a tutorial service like Level Up Tutorials, and I might not recommend it just because of the pure amount of effort involved in it, especially like I said, nowadays a lot of people are going to just release on their own because it's more than possible to do that. So I might just focus on bigger courses, building up a platform, or going YouTube and brand deals these days.
Yep, sounds good because yeah, as you mentioned, it's really hard and it's really competitive to deal with all this other competitor that they are having a lot of money to compete with you and you are just starting out, so it will be very hard for you to be able to compete with them in this area. So the other question, I think we cover a lot of ground for Level Up Tutorial.
Yeah.
And let's go for next Syntax FM, which you are currently the co-host, and it's gets acquired by Sentry, so you will be working on that full time, which is really good. And can you tell us how many stream you currently have over different platform and how many show you currently have? There's a lot of great show, and I am a big fan of the Syntax FM.
Yeah, so syntax is it's been large from the start in terms of how many downloads and listens we're getting. I would say you could count on any given episode that we do to get anywhere between 80 to 40,000 downloads, which is quite a bit for a podcast. We've been the number one web development podcast since 2017. So we keep pretty active charts on that. And it's a competitive market, but we've had a good spot in here for a long time. And I think that is mostly just due to the chemistry Wes and I have, right? The show is pretty well-oiled machine at this point. We just have fun talking about this stuff, which is one of the reasons why my tutorials were successful in the first place, is I just like this stuff. I'm excited about it. I'm having fun teaching it to you because I like it. And so that's what the show's about, right? Wes and I, it's like getting to chat with two friends, just chatting about the stuff they like. So each show gets quite a bit of downloads. And one of the big things we've been looking at is, since we feel that the podcasting world certainly can grow larger than 80,000 downloads an episode or 40,000 downloads, but can it in the web development podcast niche? We haven't seen bigger numbers than that. So our big move right now is onto YouTube. We've been releasing every podcast episode as a YouTube video. We have a YouTube channel. It's at Syntax FM on YouTube. And so the big move there is that, all right, where are our next 100,000 downloads per episode going to come from? It's going to come from YouTube. YouTube is the place where more people are. So that's the play. We just started at the beginning of this year, and we're still experimenting there and learning. But each video now, they can get up to like 10,000 views, which isn't a ton, but that's 10,000 views we didn't have before. So it's all in addition to what we were getting before on the podcast. And in addition, we also hired another creator, CJ, to do video full time on YouTube. And as an added benefit of that, he's been able to fill in if either Wes or I is unable to be at the podcast for any given reason. Like Wes just had a child, so he had to take some time off. CJ got to fill in. He got to be a co-host with me, and we got to learn even new things. Like he was
Hmm.
teaching Vue.js and C# and things that I'm not super familiar with. That's really the next big play for us, is just getting eyes on YouTube videos is really it. And that's where we're completely focused right now, in addition to releasing the podcast in a really nice manner. And who knows from there, we have a lot of plans for the next few years that not really ready to share yet. We're working on it.
Awesome, love that. And also, I think I saw on Twitter that you start also doing some like a short video. I think maybe you also do that for Twitter and Instagram, which would be snippets from the podcast itself.
Yeah, that's been a big thing for us as well, is that there's so many, the podcast is great and a lot of people listen to it, but there's a huge percentage of developers that don't listen to podcasts, that are only on TikTok, that are only on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. That's the only place they are. In fact, when I was at React Miami, I met a guy who was like, "Oh, we did a live show." He's like, "This is my first time seeing your show. I've only ever seen you on TikTok before." I was like, "Oh, this is exactly who we're trying to reach," using that as an opportunity, because we have this massive amount of like really well researched and executed content, stuff that we want to share with as many people as possible, but we've not necessarily reached the widest audience that we could reach with that already existing content. So the big play for the last year was, how can we make that content that we've already made, that we've already put the effort in, how can we share that with more people? And sharing clips on social media was a huge part of that effort. And so definitely something we've been learning. We only started TikTok in October of last year, so it's been a very new.
Also, yeah, I think having a lot of channel, it will drive the syntax FM growth, and it will have a lot of new folks join the syntax FM community. And also, I would like to know, like before the acquisition of Sentry, what was the average brand deal for each episode, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, it was about the same, and that was really it. One of the big things for us was that our audience has been really awesome from the start. And yeah, after COVID, when people stopped commuting and stuff to work, we saw a bit of a dip, but it's now mostly returned to where it was. And yeah, I think anywhere from 40,000 to 80,000. The average episode download is 40,000, but the episodes have a long lifespan, especially now that they're easier to find on Google, or even Spotify is a big one now. The way that Spotify surfaces podcasts is a little bit, gives them a longer tail than, let's say, just a normal podcast player or Apple Podcasts or any of that stuff. For us, it's like this massive library is becoming a big helpful thing for us, because it's able to be found in places and have a long tail. So who knows what that number will be by the end of next year. Every single month we seem to hit our highest ever total downloads. It's still greatly growing, but even pre-acquisition, same thing. And that's one of the things we've been really cognizant about, even with the acquisition, is that we don't want too much to change, because the show has a very specific feel and vibe. If we ruin that feel and vibe, we'll ruin the show. So we want the show to be what it is and what it always has been. We just want to reach more people with that.
Yeah, makes sense. And also, can we talk about the average brand deal for each episode before the acquisition, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so it's funny, I have to even look this up because I've already forgotten. We had our sponsorship information public for a long time. Let me see if I can sponsorship. We might have even nuked that document. But we were asking for, I think, like 1,200 an ad read, which is a good amount of money. We were doing, how many ad reads? Ad reads a week, maybe 7 ad reads a week or something. And you'd think that's a lot of money. You think that would be too much money for brands to spend, but the brands that were advertising on Syntax saw such a good return from the ad reads, that we had most brands were signing up for as many as they could, and we'd sell out even September the year before. So
Wow.
let's say September of 2019, we would sell out completely for the entire year of 2020 instantly. We would open it available. We couldn't get rid of them fast enough. And largely it's because we were pretty cheap compared to even a lot of other podcasts. And we were doing that because if you had kept a brand deal with us from, let's say, the first time you ever subscribed or to do a brand deal, and obviously we'd work out like bulk pricing for a lot of episodes, we would give you that same rate forever. So we wouldn't raise the rates ever on our longest sponsors. So our longest sponsors were getting that same rate that we had promised them even in 2017. And therefore, they were buying up months and months of episode spots. And like I said, we'd be booked for the full year right away. So that was like a whole piece of it too. And Sentry, as part of the acquisition, they saw just a lot of one, they're huge fans of opening up big content that is like really high quality and stuff that's like useful to the community. They're huge fans of that. And the way they saw it is like, this platform has been good to us in terms of the sponsorship deals that we've been doing with them. What if we showed that goodwill to the community and got rid of the ads for everybody? And that was like the whole play for them was like, all right, now this thing that you love is not going to be filled with ads. We'll support the creation and the evolution of this thing. Yeah, the sponsorship thing was super lucrative for us. Who knows how long that would have lasted? It lasted from 2017 to until the acquisition, but nothing lasts forever. So it did really well for us.
Hmm. Awesome. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing this information. I never it was like a public information, but thank you for pointing that also.
Yeah, we never wanted to hide any of that thing. We wanted to be pretty transparent.
So currently, Syntax is working on that full time. What will be the next thing after the Syntax? So we will be working on that full time. What will be like? Is there any other plan for growing the Syntax FM community?
Yeah, we have a lot of plans, some of which I'll keep a little close to the vest right now. The big part is for us is that we just want to do what we're doing and reach more people and even just continually improve the quality of what we're doing without losing the vibe. I think we're very cognizant that we do not want to lose what makes Syntax special or unique. We don't want it to feel like it's sold out. We don't want it to feel like it's a corporate entity. We want to keep that complete control over it. So Wes and I have complete control over the project, which is like the best news in the world for us because we love it dearly, right? It's something that it's so much of our entire lives at this point. The big stuff is, again, I think you'll see a lot more of us on YouTube. You'll see just more in better produced content and more types of content. I think that's really it.
Yeah, awesome. Can you tell us more about this? Is the question that I usually ask to many of the folks being in the podcast, like more about the work-life balance. Can you tell us more about how the usual day-to-day looks like for Scott, the dad and the Syntax
Yeah.
host?
Yeah. It's changed a lot since the acquisition. So, pre acquisition, Syntax was a Monday project for me. We did all of the research, all of the recording, all of everything on Mondays, and that's it. So, it was a 1 day of the week project for me. And then I had to work on Level Up tutorials every other day. So, I was recording, I was sourcing videos, I built the whole website myself. So, I was building the website, all of those things. Now it's quite a bit different because we have 6 people on the Syntax team now. And so I find myself in a bit more of a management role. I'm in a lot more meetings. The emphasis is on making sure the podcast is out and it's excellent every week. I'm working with CJ to strategize on his content and his YouTube videos. I'm working with Wes on coming up with new episodes and then recording them. I am working with our marketing department and trying to like really make sure that we're growing in the right ways. I'm also like working on the Syntax website very often. So that's something that we haven't lost, right? We're not farming this stuff out. We see things like the Syntax website as a learning ground, but also it's like a legitimizer. It's the stuff that I'm working on. It's why I'm a legit developer. I'm building this huge web platform myself and with Wes and the team. And so that's a large part of it. So I'm working on the Syntax site. I'm planning content, doing a lot of demos, even speaking at conferences and prepping all that stuff. A lot of it's just research. And one of the coolest things about this job is that I'm a learner. I'm a lifelong type of learner, type of person. I really just enjoy making it. And I get the freedom to get that time to figure it out. And then I can teach other people, which is always what I've been doing from the start. So it really is fully encompassing day to day of the things that I would have wanted to do 10 years ago.
Awesome. What about the personal life? Do you like spend most of the time, like some time with your family and your child?
Yes. One of the hugest reasons why we agreed to this acquisition in the first place was work life balance. Owning my own business was tough. I was working nights, I was working weekends, I was grinding hard to make sure that it was working. because that was a huge part of our income for our family. And so that was, for me, that was the way that I was able to support my family, was to work nonstop. And it sucked working nonstop. So now I get to have a 9 to 5 job. I show up to work at 8 o'clock, I leave at 4. It's like a standard job, but I can still put full energy into it. It's just not like I'm fighting for my life with it. So the work life balance for me is way better, especially, again, I'm working from my home office. If my son needs to go to soccer practice, drop everything, take him to soccer practice. Kid has to get picked up from school, I can go pick up that kid from school early. And I'm just available. I'm here. My son is actually just peeking in my office window just now, just seeing how this interview is going, because we just get to hang out all the time. It feels way better in that regard. I get to be around.
So yeah, awesome. Love that. Yeah, I'm happy that you have currently more work-life balance and you can spend more of your time with your family. I love that. So I think this will be the last question for me. Can you give us more resources, tips for inspiring developer that would like to get into entrepreneurship as a overall? Maybe start a new podcast, maybe start an online courses that they always bragging about. So what do you think that will be the best advice to give to younger self, and to like a, it's like a self-reflection for people that would like to get into entrepreneurship, that they don't have a lot of insight about what is being like
You know,
an
in
entrepreneur,
my
a
understanding
dev
of things
entrepreneur
today
especially.
is that it gets way easier the bigger of an audience you have personally. So gaining a personal audience is the number one most important thing in my mind. And to do that, you just get started. Whether it's writing blog posts, it's making YouTube videos, it's making TikTok videos, you're gonna latch onto something that works a little bit easier for you than anything else. And I've always been a fan of letting your kind of natural inclinations guide you in terms of which avenue you pick up. I'm not a skilled reader, I'm not a skilled writer. YouTube made a lot of sense for me for that reason. I wasn't necessarily good on camera. I had to learn those things, even like speaking and coding and stuff. I had to learn, but I still followed like what I was naturally more talented at. I talk a lot. I'm like a naturally talky person. So for me, talking into a microphone made a lot of sense. So gain an audience in a way that makes sense for your abilities. And once you have that audience, it's much easier to figure out how to make money off of that. But I'd say number one most important thing is to gain that audience in the first place.
Awesome, love that. Do you have any recommendation for book, online resources that you would like to recommend for people that would like to get into this entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, to a lot of ebooks. Let me check my Audible. For me, I'm more of a fan of the books that are less about like business learnings and more about self understanding. One book I really liked recently that is really kind of cliche is Crucial Conversations, in terms of like how to really understand and talk to people in a way that can get through to them. Super Communicators is a book I really liked recently about, again, communication is always something that uh, in my past have struggled with. But I think Super Communicators was really good. I think my pitch for Super Communicators was I was able to get someone on Reddit to apologize to me after they were trying to argue with me about something. That's like a pretty big win, because everybody on Reddit's so eager to fight with each other. I like Eat That Frog, Deep Work. A lot of these books are about like, again, like self-help type of books. But again, things like Atomic Habits, these are all books that, for me, you cultivate the good habits, which is the consistency, the creating content, the showing up, the putting in the work, and the rest follows. Whether or not it happens to be optimized completely is a different story. But if you put in the work and you make it happen over time, the rest will happen.
Love that. I appreciate that a lot. And I think that's it for the episode. Thank you so much, Scott, for your time and for accepting my invite. It's a huge milestone for me to be able to get you on my podcast. And I appreciate that a lot more than, yeah, that's
Oh,
it for me.
no problem, man. I'm happy to do it anytime. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love sharing the stuff that I've picked up over time, and all the
No,
lessons learned, so that other people can skip some steps.
awesome. So it's